Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. Go for it.
Very well. Thank you very much, and good evening, and welcome to the Planning Board of the Town of East Hampton, our meeting of July 10th, 2024. We have a mighty full package tonight. We start with a public hearing, and then we have a few matters on for work session, a couple of boards of review, and a couple of resolutions that looks like one resolution that we have. And then after that, we will be hearing from the housing director, Eric Shantz, who will have a presentation about some affordable housing code changes. Eric will be at the end of our meeting so that we can get all the folks who are here for public hearings and other matters out. So with that, we have the Adamadou Cositas minor subdivision public hearing, and if Ed, would you read in the notice?
Right. Take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider the application of Adamadou and Cositas minor subdivision. Approval pursuant to Chapter 220, subdivision of land of the East Hampton Town Code to divide a 269,170 square foot, 6.179 acres parcel into 3 individual lots. Proposed Lot 1 will contain 93,541 square feet. Proposed Lot 2 will contain 91,628 square feet. Proposed Lot 3 will contain 84,002 square feet. All 3 lots will be sized at approximately 84,000 square feet when easements are excluded as required. The parcel is located on the south side of Montauk Highway in Waynescott and is situated in an A2 resident zoning district. As shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton, and are identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcel 300-197-3-10. Subject application is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 128 Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. The survey prepared by Barilski Land Surveying, dated revised June 29th, 2023, and a set of plans prepared by TF Engineering PLLC, including driveway plan and profile, STA 10+00 to 15+50 C1, and driveway plan and profile STA 15+50 to 16+72 C2 are available for inspection at the Planning Board offices at 300 Panago Place in East Hampton. The public hearing will be held live and in person at the Planning Board and will be available electronically by video and teleconferencing, and will be televised on local TV, LTV, channel 22, and available for live stream on the LTV website, ltveh.org. The public shall be permitted to appear in person, but may also provide comments on the matter being heard by calling 351-888-6331. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent, or by attorney, or by call-in to the live stream, or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton. Comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to the Planning Board at ehamptonny.gov. All comments must be received by the Planning Board by the date and time of this public hearing. Dated June 5th, 2024, Samuel Kramer, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ed. Do we have jurisdiction?
Yes, we do, Chair. I reviewed the affidavit of service and posting, and it does appear there was proper notice, and you therefore have jurisdiction.
Very well, thank you. Tina, you're going to give us a little background here?
Sure, thank you, Sam. Hello, everybody. This is the property, Adamadou Cositas, 3-lot subdivision. It is located at 377 Montauk Highway in Waynescott. It says Route 27 here. Just zooming out so you can see where the property is with respect to the geography.
Tina, I think your microphone.
Oh, sorry. Did you hear any of that? Or?
We did, but.
Okay. Pardon me. This is the proposed subdivision map. It is a 3-lot subdivision. As noted in the hearing notice, all of the lots are above 84,000 square feet, meeting the minimum required lot area in this zoning district. There would be a common driveway, eastern property border that has a compliant access and fire protection features, turnarounds and such. And that is reviewed by the fire marshal. We do have an open issue regarding this with respect to the northern long-eared bat. Part of the secret review, it was observed that there's potential for northern long-eared bat to be in the vicinity of the project area. We instructed the applicant to submit to DEC the land use change proposed. We're waiting for that feedback, so I will be recommending to the board that we continue the hearing, remain open until we get those comments, so we can ensure we've got all the information we need regarding that potential environmental. The board has received several written public comments regarding the subdivision. So far, I encourage the board to review the record as the planning board will, planning department will. There is, I think, people here wanting to speak this evening as well, so we can get ready to that.
Ready? Okay, the way this will work is anybody in the room who wishes to speak will be given 3 minutes to speak. Then we will check with LTV and see if there are any people who wish to speak via the phone. They will also be given 3 minutes. And after everybody who's in the room who wishes to speak, and then everyone on the phone who wishes to speak have spoken, then we will do it again with an additional 3 minutes for anybody who wants to add to their comments. So with that, is there, oh, and I should add, if you do wish to speak, please step up to the podium and give us your name, spell your last name, and your address. With that, is there anybody in the room who wishes to be heard with respect to this application? Do you? Oh, go right ahead.
Sean McCaffrey, Dewey's Planning, CJ, and then Ian, MCC, AFF, I'm here representing the homeowners. We're here to discuss the minor subdivision of 377 Montauk Highway located in Wainscott. The property is 6.179 acres in area, and we're proposing to subdivide the property into 3 lots ranging in size from 84,002 square feet to 93,541 square feet. We've worked closely with the board, the fire marshal, and the planning department to come to this final design, which we believe is the best proposal. The 3 lots will be accessed from Montauk Highway by means of a common driveway on the easterly side of the property. The common driveway has been designed with proper drainage and adequately sized for the emergency vehicles. We have worked with the neighbor to the east, the Tansmans, and they do not object to the project. We have also reviewed the letters from the neighbors to the south and find their objections are generalized objections. There are no particular impacts to their properties. Lots can be under construction at any time with proper permitting, and these lots have been designed to meet code requirements. The neighbor will also be protected by the standard of the code regarding rear yard setbacks, coverage, pyramid, and clearing restrictions. The neighbors to the south are zoned A residents, and these lots will be zoned A2, having greater setbacks than they are subject to. All construction access will be also taken from Montauk Highway. We would also like to note that the DEC does not review subdivision. The proper timing to apply to the DEC is when construction will be taking outside of their clearing windows. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I should have asked Matt, did you have anybody online on queue?
Yes, we do.
We do, okay. Well, if you're here in the room, please go ahead. I hadn't realized that you were going to be speaking in favor of the application. I should have had you at the end. Okay, so.
Good evening, Jim Daigle, D-A-I-G-L-E, 389 Montauk Highway. I share 177 feet common on the west side. Just wanted to tell the committee we have reviewed the survey. We have no objections.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the room who wishes to be heard with respect to this application at this public hearing? Okay, all right, Matt?
Yes,
Matt?
are you ready?
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to unmute last four digits, 4375. You are live.
Your name, please, spell your last name and your address. Hello?
The last four digits, 4375. You are live.
Going once? Twice? Okay. 3 times. Okay, Matt, do you have anybody else in queue?
0 additional callers. Thank you.
All right, very well, thank you. Okay, I take it you have no comment with respect to the last public comment. All right, very well. In that case, Ed, if you'd like to make a motion?
We're keeping it open.
We're keeping it open,
We are, oh,
For the longer events.
so we could,
So I recommended we keep it open for
You
the
did, you
DEC
did.
comments. You know, Shannon, if you have that in writing from DEC, I'd prefer to see it. The planning board is secret lead agency and needs to make a determination with respect to the environmental consequences of the matter, which include in this case the northern long-eared bat. Delaying that type of review to like building permit wouldn't capture this issue. They're not going to make you go to DEC at that time. And DEC's guidance on northern long-eared bat has recently changed. Land use change does need a review from them. So if you have something in writing from them, I'd love to see it. Yeah. But I wouldn't recommend that the planning board completes. We can make that a condition of the secret determination if we're ready to act, that DEC requirements be taken into account. It would be better to have them.
my concern is just how long it would take for that comment to arrive, and how long would we have to keep the public hearing open for that comment? I presume that there's no other areas that we're in, that, for which we're keeping the public hearing open, correct? Or is it for all purposes?
So there were several public comments
Yeah, those
issued
we
in
have.
writing. If the applicant's verbal response hasn't fully, addressed all of those.
Well, I heard comments responding to
Yeah.
the written comments, so
Yeah.
that's covered. The
Okay.
only issue is whether we're keeping the public hearing open
Right.
for the first question is, would that only be for the long-eared bat? And it sounds like that's all it would be for, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the next question is, how long will it take for that comment to arrive? And if we can make it a condition of approval, can we close the public hearing now, subject to that additional comment?
We could. I do want to, you mentioned that the concerns of the neighbors have addressed. Did that result in any changes to the subdivision map or anything? So no, there's no open matters at all?
So then
So if
you'll
there's
have,
no changes, then we can just make it conditioned upon receipt of the DEC comments.
DEC comments, okay, is that all right with us?
okay.
Sounds good.
So can I make a motion to close public hearing with the condition that we will make as a condition of approval, receiving comments from the DEC on
Before any building permits are
before any building
issued.
permits are issued? Yeah, I made that motion.
Second.
Okay.
You got that motion,
I won't
right?
make you say it
All
again.
those-
That was some motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed 6-0, 1 absence. Okay, very well, thank you.
Okay.
And we'll look forward to your wrap-up memo and
Thanks.
seeing you again. Thank you. Okay, the next matter we have on for is a lot line modification. Matters Myers is the applicant here. There we are, welcome. Okay, and Sharon, that's yours, and is Tina covering that? or you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to help you with the different circumstances. They told me, yeah.
The applicant's attorney was behind everybody else, they didn't see.
That's his trick.
He's hiding in there.
Excuse me 1 second, planning board. Is this a
Yes.
public comment or no? A public
No,
hearing?
no.
No. Okay,
No,
perfect.
no,
Thank
no, we're
you.
done, I'm sorry, Matt, we're done with the public hearings.
Thank you very much.
Go back to regular order. Okay? Okay, all right, go ahead, Tina.
Okay. Thank you. Here is the aerial imagery for this next application. It is the Myers lot line application, 42 and 48 Floyd Street in East Hampton. So here are the two lots, and I'll give you the neighborhood view. I'm not going to talk about this for a long time. This application proposes a very modest change in the alignment of this lot line in order to address kind of the reality on the grounds that with respect to fencing and planting that exists on the site. So this green area shows how the lot line's being adjusted, the boundary between both these parcels. Both parcels are substandard now. Both parcels will remain the exact same size. We have no issues for this. I don't want to keep talking about it.
Does the applicant have anything that they wish to add?
Thomas Crouch, attorney for the applicant. I'm here to answer any questions, but I'd like to hear the board's discussion. We would just ask that the board approve or, decide to approve and waive public hearing.
Very well, thank you. Okay, looking for my little cheat sheet here. Sharon, let's hear this.
Yeah, no, this sounds like, I spoke to Will, who went out to the property, and basically it's just following what's occurred with the landscaping. And just the way they're living right now is the lot lines that they're asking for. So I don't have a problem with this, and I would waive the public hearing for this application.
Is the neighbor on board with this?
Yes, the two properties are owned by mother and daughter.
Oh, okay.
And there's actually a typo in the memo that it's both are Myers, MYERS, not. Yeah, it's not.
All right, very well. Okay, anybody have any comments, questions, additions? Okay, so is the proposed lot line modification acceptable to the board?
Yep.
Yes.
6-0. And does the board wish to require a public hearing?
No.
No, 6-0 on that. Mission accomplished. Very good.
You need a whole new septic.
Yeah, right. While you're here.
While you're here.
Well, we got your attention. Okay. All right, next is 3 Mile Harbor Affordable Housing. Lou, this is yours. And Dan, is Dan going to be doing it? Dan? Okay, again, the applicant is here, so go right ahead.
Good. All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman and the planning board. This is the second review of the most recent modification application for the 3 Mile Harbor Affordable Housing Project. This is located at 286 and 290 3 Mile Harbor Road. And just for a refresher, again, it was a 50-unit affordable housing complex, which the proposed modifications are, which they're more detailed summarized in the memo. Again, primarily relate to the relocation of several structures, in addition to updates to drainage, grading, and landscaping. So the last time this project was reviewed at the June 5th, 2024 meeting. The board at that time issued several comments related to the project site. Our memo kind of goes through those, in addition to a response letter that we received by the applicants that address each of these comments made by the planning board. So this memo includes both the comments and our assessment of their responses to each of those. So to begin off, the first comment was with respect to the purposes of the proposed changes. The planning board asked for clarification regarding kind of the purpose and details regarding specific in terms of the relocation of the playground area, the bus stop shelter, the meandering path, and the crosswalk. The applicant has provided details of these within their response letter, which are primarily summarized by the primarily to meet the minimum required slopes and additional ADA compliance was their primary purpose for most of these. Based on our review of this, as we mentioned during the last meeting of this, we find the proposed changes to be acceptable, and the planning board should discuss whether or not, it's recommended to discuss whether or not they agree that this is satisfactory based on their most recent submission. Following this, the next comment had to do with stormwater drainage, and we're trying to pull up the plan here for you. Hold on. Okay, so during the last meeting, the planning board had requested that the applicants, that they address the town consultant engineering comments who reviewed the most recent submission, submitted a copy of the SWIP reports, some copies of most recent inspection reports, and implement measures to address erosion occurring at the site as soon as possible. So as you may remember, during the last meeting, both the planning department and the town consulting engineer conducted a site visit where we noticed there was severe erosion occurring on the project site. In addition, we became aware that there was on-site flooding occurring to some of the structures there. And making sure this was addressed as soon as possible was kind of our biggest recommendation. The applicant has responded to several of these comments within their most recent submission. They submitted the most recent SWIP reports from, which is the stormwater pollution prevention plan. They directly submitted one from June 7th, 2024, but we've also received one, and it is attached in the memo, one from June 27th, later in June. I'm trying to think of this, I'll find this, June 27th, 2024, that had indicated that the sediment control measures temporary sediment and erosion control measures have been repaired to a satisfactory condition. The town consulting engineer also conducted a more follow-up visit to the site on July 1st, 2024, indicating that the conditions on the temporary were in fact satisfactory. The applicants themselves also included images and pictures showing this, showing some of the improvements to the soil and the grading that have been provided. However, there were some comments noted during this, specifically, and this is going to come up later in this memo, having to do with some of the drainage structures constructed for the building 1, near adjacent to the first building of the project site. The engineers, when they went out there, they said that everything seemed to substantially conform with the drainage plans, except for those structures which appear to have been constructed in a different location than was provided in the plans. So with respect to that, they recommended that a field inspection, field verification should be done within, surrounding those areas in terms of the grading and the drainage surrounding the building 1, and if it's required, corrected in a manner that conforms with the proposed design shown throughout the plans, which again is shown here, and it's referring to some of the structures around this first building, which it's a little hard to see up there. And then, furthermore, again, just saying, our recommendation is the applicant respond to town consulting engineer's comments in addition to what else, a few other issues brought up throughout the memo. Moving on from here, we also did notice, kind of related to the stormwater drainage, that there is a natural rock swale located in the, it's kind of the western from this point, yard of the project site, which the planning board have requested that this be, depicted on the provided plans because it wasn't entirely clear throughout the previous submissions. The applicants have notified that a call out has been added to the provided drainage plan to show where it is. However, on a review of the plans, we noticed that this wasn't always shown on all the provided plans. For example, we include a little memo image showing the landscaping plan within the memo that didn't seem to include this location, and so it was our recommendation that this be shown kind of throughout the project site. Throughout the submitted plans. In addition to this, though, however, we also noted that, we recommended during the previous review that that this had potential, there's going to be drainage to go through here, it's going to be wet, and there might be, slippery conditions there, that additional measures be provided to, protect pedestrians and others from accessing this area. The applicants have proposed to protect it, as they indicated in their response letter, with the pollinator gardens, which I'll try to pull up the landscaping plan now so the board can see that. So the rock swale would be located basically here, and there's some vegetation along the northern yard here, in addition to pollinator gardens that will be surrounding this. They've indicated that, once the clusters of beach grass and pollinator garden mix take root, the natural stone swale shall be out of sight, and they referred to the plans as what they've indicated. So we, the planning board should kind of discuss whether or not they find this to be acceptable. The only remark that we had was that we did notice that, in this decision, board should be aware that some of the rock fill does come very close to the meandering path. So potentially that may require additional protection, depending on how it's, how close it is and how the board may perceive this. So moving on from here, again, we go back to that comment we had about building one. Again, it was noted that building one, which is located right here, experienced some on-site flooding, or we became aware that has experienced it in the past. The applicants had indicated that the site drainage system was installed and all roof leaders are connected, and building one no longer experiences flooding. However, we also had those comments from the town consulting engineer indicating that some of the structures may not have been built to the as-built plans here. So something that, again, we think should be field verified and confirmed by the applicants throughout this process. So moving on from the drainage, stormwater runoff, we go to the comments with respect to the proposed bus stop shelter. So they did relocate the bus stop from the eastern, as you may remember, from the the western yard of the project site, kind of around here to over here in the eastern yard. Basically, we've asked for clarification to make sure that the board asked that, show consistent plans to consistently show it, the new location throughout it. This has been provided. The applicant has successfully provided this. However, the planning board also asked for details like bus shelter elevations to be provided, showing details, specifics, dimensions to it. According to the applicants, this is something that is still in development and will be submitted in the future going forward. So our recommendations are similar. That saying that they successfully complied with showing the location of it. However, we still recommend that those elevations are submitted, particularly given that this will also be required by the ARB on their review. Moving on from there, we did ask the applicants during the last submission that we noted that some of the structures that were proposed to be relocated have been removed. Were already constructed, partially constructed as of the time of our most recent site visit. So we asked for the plan board, asked for a revised set of plans showing, these being removable. They have submitted, as you can see here, what they're calling a construction demolition plan, SP 4.1, indicating the removal of the previously constructed crosswalk, concrete pad, and radial ramp that are here. To eastern former location, based on our review of this, we found the applicant essentially complied with the request to kind of show this. The town consultant engineer also reviewed it, now found no objection to the provided plans. The plan board should discuss whether or not they find these to be acceptable. So going forward from there, we also mentioned that there was a proposed relocation of this meandering path located here in kind of the northwestern yard of the project site. During the previous memo, we did notice that there were several steep slopes located directly adjacent to this path. And the planning board and the applicant recommended, and the planning board also agreed, that protected vegetation should be provided along this path as opposed to fencing, as the planning department recommended, to propose enhanced public safety while using the path. And I'll show you that with this most recent submission, pull up their landscaping plan. The applicants have provided additional vegetation throughout the meandering path. To give you directly what they said, in lieu of fencing, additional evergreens, eastern red cedar have provided at the top of the slope along the meandering path to enhance public safety. As you can see from the plans here, some of these red cedars are here. Additionally, evergreens located along this path. While we reviewed these plans, although it does appear that, vegetation has been provided, to us, it didn't appear that, it may have been sufficient for what is there. Again, just a reminder to the board, some of these steep slopes are located, directly adjacent throughout the paths entirely. It seems that all the vegetation we provide within areas that have been, deemed more critical, or according to the town engineer, they're providing critical areas as opposed to throughout the entirety of it. So it was our recommendation, obviously we find no issue with the use of protected vegetation, in lieu of fencing, but we did recommend that additional plantings be provided along this path's entirety to provide additional enhanced public safety. So going forward from there, we get to an issue that we kind of discussed a little more detail during the last meeting, had to do with proposed clearing. the existing and proposed clearing of the project site. Specifically, the planning board requested that the applicant address the discrepancies in clearing calculations, ensuring that clearing, keeping it to the originally approved 243,000 square feet that was originally approved in October of 2021 by the planning board. Ensure that the project fence is installed as shown on the approved plans. So with respect to the proposed clearing, at this time, it seems that based on the most recent submission, it wasn't, the provided plans weren't sufficient enough for us to they don't appear to adequately address the plans and not sufficient enough to provide additional comments in respect to the comments provided last time. However, we did want to make aware that the applicant is currently working with the Natural Resources Department on a revegetation plan. That was after this has been submitted, have been contacted. They've also been in contact with us about this, coming forward with a plan to revise some of those clarifications. So at the time, these, during, as you'll note throughout the memo, it's similar comments that we provided the last time, respecting additional clarifications required, additional in terms of some of the different plans. However, it is something that is still currently in the works by the applicant. It's going to be, submitted going forward. So just to reiterate, our suggestions were that, recommends that a revised set of plans be submitted after depicting existing proposed clearing areas of the project site, which should not exceed 243,300 square feet, which was originally approved. And then with the submission, we also recommend the applicants clarify which areas of the project site should be cleared and vegetated, as it's not entirely clear based on this most recent submission. And this is, again, just respect to the clearing aspect. There was a following up part we also mentioned too about the project limiting fence, which the applicant did indicate that the project limiting fence has been repaired as shown, previously approved the plans, and they included it kind of with the site photographs in addition to the SWIP report. And again, based on our review of this, in terms of the photographs provided, the SWIP reports that have been provided, and the town engineer's review, it seems that this has been repaired to satisfactory condition, which we, commend the applicants for providing. As part of that. So going from here, there was also a comment regarding the proposed pollinator gardens, which the planning board found, that during the last review, the applicant had proposed to do more pollinator gardens as opposed to more vegetation. The planning board did find these to be acceptable in lieu of the former planting regime. However, planning department had a recommendation that these be revised to include more perennial species. Adding more perennial species to them so this can be more consistent year-round protections we've provided. And the applicant was recommended to, so the applicant, in response to this, has indicated on, within the provided response letter that they're going to take direction from us, the planning department, and in terms of recommendations going forward with this, they have no objection to providing more perennials. However, at this time, it seems that we haven't had a direct conversation regarding this at the moment. I'm sure this is something that is going to be, provided going forward, as part of this, that following submissions that may come through. But again, we also recommended again the applicant updating the landscaping plan and coordinate, if as stated, coordinate with us to kind of provide more of a pollinator, perennial species throughout this. Going from there, again, we had another comment regarding the, working with natural resources regarding landscaping and clearing. Again, we've indicated previously the applicants are currently working with natural resources regarding this and have submissions coming forward, and maybe they'll be able to explain a little more tonight regarding this. But this is kind of a similar comment to the proposed clearing that we previously discussed. However, finally, going from there, there was a last question regarding the proposed lighting for this, and we've indicated previously that several changes have been made to the proposed lighting plan. The applicants themselves have actually provided with the most recent, several changes were made that required further clarification. The applicants did in the most recent submissions give us specific details, which are in the memo, describing the specific fixtures that have been changed and why they've been changed. However, several of our comments previously issued don't appear to have been addressed within the most recent submission in terms of indication of, showing depiction bubbles or highlights exactly where these are, in addition to other clarifications that were previously recommended within the previous submission. So although this has been clarified by the applicant, it is still a recommendation that the original comments remain, should be addressed as part of future submissions. So, to kind of summarize everything in conclusion, we did find the application still to be incomplete pending the submission of additional information regarding the existing proposed limits of clearing, site revegetation, drainage around the first building, and exterior lighting, and other items that were additionally addressed throughout this memo. Many of these, again, just to reiterate, these were requested previously and, have not fully been addressed during this most recent submission. So it's our recommendation that we kind of continue the conversation forward, work with the applicants tonight. And that's where we leave off.
Very good. Very thorough. But we all know this is a multifaceted application, and so thank you for gathering it all together. Good report. Does the applicant wish to be heard? Your choice.
Good evening. I'm Katie Casey from the East Hampton Housing Authority. Here with me this evening is Dylan Graham from R&M. He can speak directly to any questions the board has regarding drainage. Also with me this evening is Walter Beal from Georgia Construction, our co-developer partner. So if you have any questions, they're the technical guys. Other than that, we do have a meeting pending with Natural Resources regarding the revegetation. It's a little bit difficult. There are different calculations for the clearing, and that's all being hammered out now. Other than that, we're just here to answer questions.
Very well.
Thank you.
Okay. And Lou?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think a lot of the points that we made at our last meeting were addressed by the applicant, so there's no reason to go over those. There are a couple of other points that are, in my mind, not as important as the main points, which I'll get to. So I'll address those first. The natural stone swale that's too close to the path, I think that, in my opinion, that needs a little bit more of a buffer zone. So that's my comment on that. I'm with the planning department on that one. The drainage system east of building 1, I think needs to be corrected so that it's in conformance with the proposed design. And I'm not sure about whether or not you need more vegetation around the meandering path. I'm sort of open to that. It looks to me like there's enough, but the planning department seems to think that it isn't enough. So I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. So you hear both sides, sort of. And the main point for me, the most important point, is the clearance. And I'm confused with the numbers that are on the plans, and maybe you can address that here tonight or give us some clarification. The numbers that you show on your plans show that the total vegetation, and that includes the pollinator garden, and I'll get to that, whether that should be included or not, but that's 59,000 square feet, the pollinator gardens. But even if you include that, the total vegetation is about 507,000 square feet. And the total lot area is 622,000 square feet. So that is a difference of about 115,000 square feet. That would be, in my mind, would be the clearance. So that doesn't make any sense though, because the number that the planning department is looking to have is 243,000 square feet. So can you help me sort of get my head around those numbers?
Can I just add one clarifying point? in order for an area to be considered vegetated, it has to be natural vegetation and unmaintained, like in an unmaintained state that like mimics the natural community that would be there without the development. So if they're counting, and this is what I think, and please answer, but I just wanted to, put that code kind of information on the table. In order for an area to be considered vegetated, it can't be landscaped vegetation or pollinator garden. It would need to be, here forested with, significant amount of shrubs, that kind of thing.
So the pollinator garden is 59,000. Even if we remove that,
Yeah.
it's still.
I agree with you. So one of the problems that we're having, and we did actually talk to Mr. David Gallo, I think I'm saying the name right, earlier today, myself and the Natural Resources Department, and invited them to come meet with the Planning Department and Natural Resources next week to hash out the details, because I think we're talking past one another, just in kind of trading memos and submissions. So we said, let's come in and let's, talk about how we can bring this into compliance and all get on the same page.
We're going to get to that 243,000 square
Right.
foot.
What the planning board originally approved was 243,000 square feet of clearing.
As long as we get to that number, then it doesn't, we don't need to go into it to.
Right. That's what we're trying to get to. And I don't think I definitely don't have the answers. We had asked after we received the most recent submission in order to, move this application along as quickly as possible, because it is affordable housing. We want to make sure we're working with the team to get it done as quickly as possible. We had asked for some additional information to kind of outline what are they counting as clearing. We didn't get that yet. So it's hard to have that conversation until we have the detail.
And as I mentioned before, those other points are not as important to me, but nevertheless, they are important enough that they should be taken care of. Other than that, we're good.
Go ahead.
I have a question about one of your minor points, which is the stone swale, and the term public safety has come up, and I'm perplexed as to what the safety issue is with the path and the proximity to the stone swale. Is it?
You don't want people to go into the stone swale.
Falling into it.
But, okay, so a kid's gonna go in there. I see that it's like an attractive nuisance, right? How deep is the on the worst day of rain, how much water is gonna flood into that? And is moving a path a foot or two away from the swale going to make much of a difference?
I don't know if they intend to move the path. I think they're trying to create a buffer.
Yeah, so our comments are just when you go to the site, the boulders are huge and it's kind of very, you've been there, many of you, I'm sure. It's very central. Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, that's the rain garden. That's the rain garden beside the site.
Over here.
Yeah.
That's it.
So that doesn't show kind of like some areas, it's just kind of right central to the site. There's no protections around it. Just raising, there are going to be children living in these apartments, right? One would hope. Is that going to be like an inviting place for them to go into, slip, fall? Something that is a visual cue to not enter, not really because of stormwater flooding, but more because of slippery, huge rocks,
If there are frogs in there, the kids are going to go in there.
Yeah, well.
And I even wrote, there's an option of a fence. And I'm like, I wrote to my own notes, like no to fencing around there.
Yeah. Again, it was a suggestion, and if the board doesn't think it's necessary, the applicants don't think it's necessary, that's fine. But, kind of a large hazardous looking area, we felt it warrant mention in the board's consideration.
Okay, what is the solution if there's no fence?
Yes.
Yeah, let's see what other issues we have before we go back to the applicants. Is there anybody else who has any issues?
The clearing is my key issue.
They have the two things I was questioning, what was the safety issue and the clearing. I think that's important.
Flooding around building one seems to be, but you said you're working on them correcting that?
Can I speak to the flooding?
Yes.
Yeah,
please.
why don't you, before you start, do we have anything else that we want to ask the applicants to address?
I had clearing, plantings, flooding around building one.
There you are. That sounds like enough. Go right ahead.
So I'm Walter Beal, the Vice President of Construction for Georgica Green Ventures.
And with regard to building one, last meeting, we were all perplexed about where someone reported, the actual document says it's been brought to our attention that there was flooding at some point in building one. We don't know of any flooding in building one. In fact, it did take water last September when we had 7 inches of rain in one evening, which everybody knows about that storm. That was prior to the entire hill being graded and vegetated and such, and all the drainage structures weren't in place, and the flashings and the siding wasn't up. Building one, I'd be happy to invite. In fact, I think the town engineer saw it when he was there in July, early July. The building's dry, so I don't know how to prove it other than bring someone back and after the next rain and show them that it's dry. It's not taking water. So that's what I have as far as the flooding.
Yeah, the last time we were talking about flooding, we had had some severe flooding, but subsequent to the last meeting, it's been pretty dry out here. So you haven't been able to see if the fixes that you applied took.
There was a heavy rain the evening of the last meeting. And
yes, there was.
There was.
Yes,
and
yes.
the site performed very well that next morning because we were all watching to see what's going on with the what are they talking about? So, and I just want to say that we did in fact take your advice and heed you. We heard you and we fixed it, and it's almost in its permanent form. The only thing left to do is now the final top asphalt on the road, which would bring the asphalt up to those.
That was the problem. You weren't at
Right now, there's hay bales there, which is doing its job. So,
what about the clearing issue?
So the clearing issue, I defer to the planning department who.
We have a meeting.
It's very confusing. There's a meeting going probably Tuesday, face to face, so that we can just all get on the same page. And
this board has already stated what we're looking for. So
however we get to the 243, we're gonna make it right.
Very good. And the last thing is fencing on that swale. How do you? Nobody wants.
Alternative ideas.
Yeah, is there an alternative?
I would like to speak to that if I may.
Please.
Well, so the rocks are glacial erratics. They are not smooth. If you have river rock and there's always water, it's incredibly slippery because you get green algae growing on it. The swale does not hold water. It's a channel that directs water into the rain garden. So when it's raining, it's wet, but then it dries. So we don't anticipate any algae. River rocks also are tumbled, so they're smooth. These rocks are very rough. I don't see them as slippery. Yes, I agree. It's very attractive. I would be in there looking for frogs. But it's also worth mentioning that it's housing authority policy that all children under the age of 12 have to be supervised by an adult at all times. That's a property management thing. You don't let kids play in the rain garden.
You have like little signs that say "Don't play here" or something that discourages that kind of behavior.
We hadn't anticipated signage for the.
I mean, it seems like
no other buffer that you can put there.
Vegetation or something that would more proactively discourage any kids from running in there.
If you stay on the path, you don't go in the swale. I don't know what kind of vegetation, except for something like dense privet or green thuya giants. And even those, I mean, if somebody wants to get in there, they will, even with vegetation and I certainly wouldn't recommend a fence, so.
Something thorny.
What about UK?
I'm more susceptible to the fence, but.
What about buffering the meandering path, further buffering? Because I know you put some vegetation there. To answer the concerns, but you're saying it's not enough. Is there more vegetation that can go there? Those areas that.
on the south side, we can bring that up with planning when we meet with them, because there will be discussion of revegetation. So when we have that meeting, it's my sincere hope that we can wrap up the landscaping plan at that time.
That's what I could comment. I think it would be great to have some kind of vegetative buffer that would sort of discourage people from immediately going in, but I have to admit, I am not overly concerned that it's going to be too attractive a nuisance, I think we can overstep a little bit, overthink it.
Projecting myself back to being 5 years old, which is not very hard. I don't know, I'm looking at it thinking, I'd run
It's
in
not
there.
loose rock, right?
No.
Yeah,
No,
it's not loose.
They're heavy and they're not smooth. The surface is quite rough, and algae and moss and is not going to grow there. It's in blazing all day sun.
Good.
The only other thing I would add is that, in reviewing the report, it looks like there's any number, not too much, but any number of things that were requested. I know it was only, last time was June 4th, so it hasn't been that long. But, we're staying on top of this application, which is consistent with this board's policy of moving along affordable housing applications. So it's a, takes two to tango kind of thing. So please follow on with these various things that are mentioned in the report that we're waiting, the planning department is waiting, and I'm encouraged that you're going to be meeting to make sure that whatever that calculation is that you have to do to get to the 243,000, you get there. So, does anyone else have anything that they want to address? We'll run through the questions then, and good luck moving forward. Does the planning board find the proposed relocation of the meandering path, bus stop, shelter, pickup area, crosswalk, and playground area to be acceptable?
Yes.
Should the applicant address the town consulting engineer comments with respect to stormwater drainage and grading?
Yes.
Should the applicant submit consistent plans that show the natural rock swale accurately?
Yes.
Does the planning board find the proposed protective vegetation for the natural stone swale to be acceptable, or should additional measures such as planting and or fencing be provided in order to further prohibit this area from public access?
I think
Fencing.
the first part, I think we find it to be acceptable.
Do we want to say that we'd like to?
Well, it sounds like they're going to work on a landscape.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe some of that will.
We encourage that.
Encourage it.
Encourage it, yes. We'll hold back on doing more than that for now. Should the applicant respond to the town engineering consultant's comments with respect to building one, field verify the grades in the surrounding area and necessary correct in a manner that conforms with proposed design? Seems that the applicant said that that was addressed, but we would want that done anyway. Should the applicant submit the bus shelter elevations for review?
Yes.
Does the planning board agree with the planning department that additional planting should be provided along the meandering path in order to maximize public safety while using this path?
Yeah.
And I think that's a yes, and that's consistent with our prior comment. Should the applicant submit the requested information about landscaping and clearing, including submission of a revised set of plans indicating the existing and proposed clearing areas, keeping clearing to the originally approved 243,000 square foot, and clarify the areas considered to be cleared and vegetated throughout the project site?
Absolutely.
And we all agree with that. Should the applicant revise the pollinator seed mix to consist mostly of perennial species as recommended by the planning department?
Yes.
We agree with that. And should the applicant submit the requested information on site lighting as indicated by the planning department? And we all agree with that. So with those specifically, but there were a few others in the report that we'd like you to get to. Very well. Thank you very much. We'll see you as soon as the next time arrives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next matter that we have on is the site plan special permit evaluation for Seacrest Pool and Shed Plan. And this is Christopher's maiden voyage. So welcome, Christopher. Is the applicant? Very good. Okay. So, ooh, this is yours also. Busy day for you. Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
One moment here as I get set up. Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Chris Decker. I'm the new planner here at the town. Today we'll be going over the site plan for Seacrest Pool and Shed site plan. So the subject property is illuminated here in blue. It is 2166 Montauk Highway in eastern Amagansett. It operates the Seacrest Resort and is adjacent to 2 other oceanside resorts. For context of the surrounding area, you have the walking dunes to the end of Napeak Harbor Road towards the north, and then you also have Hither Hill State Park to the east. The property is zoned RS Resort, and it contains a pre-existing resort use, which is a permitted use by special permit. Property is within Coastal Erosion Overlay Zone 1 Ocean Littoral Zone and is partially within the local waterfront revitalization program area. The property is also within a local and New York State significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat. Before we jump into the evaluation, please be advised the applicant has recently confirmed that a revised resubmission will be made in accordance with this evaluation, just to revise some of the content. So the site plan itself proposes to remove the existing swimming pool enclosure fence, 2 decks on each side of the swimming pool, a wall near the southwest corner of the pool enclosure fence, and then the project proposes to build a new swimming pool, surrounding pool terrace, hot tub, 2 poolside pergolas, a new pool enclosure fence, as well as a storage shed and a retaining wall to support the shed. So moving into our issues of discussion, the project is a Type 2 action pursuant to SECRA, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Type 2 actions are not subject to additional review. Regarding dimensional conformance and variances, the department wants to note that dimensional conformance cannot be fully confirmed due to missing dimensions for proposed structures and the distances between existing and proposed structures. Regarding lot coverage, the site plan shows the total coverage increasing by 2,186 feet. However, 7,213 feet of new structures are proposed. Therefore, the applicant must provide the dimensions and total square feet of the structures to be removed so that we can ensure that lot coverage calculations are accurate. Regarding the pool enclosure fence, the applicant should review section 255-1189 of Town Code, requirements for accessory structures and uses of swimming pools to ensure that the enclosure fence and other associated structures with the pool are compliant with Town Code. Regarding clearing, the site where the shed is proposed, I'm going to just indicate this here on their application. So this area appears vegetated. However, the applicant should confirm whether or not this area is already considered cleared on their plans, just to confirm whether or not any clearing is proposed, given the proposal does not include any additional clearing from this project. So moving forward to necessary elements of site plan, section 255-650 of Town Code. I'm just going to briefly go over some necessary elements that we require of a site plan that appear to be missing from the application as it stands. So list number B, finished floor elevation and ground elevation. The application is missing the finished floor elevation and ground elevation at the proposed building, being the shed, and proposed structures, so pool terraces, pool enclosure fence, hot tub, pergolas, gravel walkways, and retaining wall. Moving on to the next one, floor area must be provided for new structures. It's essential for the area to be provided for new proposed walkways so that the appropriate fee can be adjusted and that coverage calculations may be accurate. And also the area of the existing pool is important to know so that we can ensure the coverage is accurate, as I mentioned. Setbacks must be shown for new structures. Some setbacks are missing on the application. Parking and drainage requirements, methods used for computing parking and drainage requirements shall be included in all site plan applications. This application has not included circulation patterns for navigation or methods for computing the existing parking. So the methods for computing parking requirements should be shown. The survey and site plan indicated bumper blocks across the parking lot. These were not observed and should be removed from the survey. Specifications must also be provided for existing drainage structures to show the existing drainage structures and requirements that are needed for the site. And then regarding exterior lighting, although there is no new additional lighting proposed, the applicant should explain their lighting details and cut sheets are missing from the application and they should be provided. Site visit revealed that existing lighting appears to be non-conforming with respect to the current guidelines. The applicant should bring the property into compliance with lighting guidelines, and any new lighting proposed should be consistent with the planning board guidelines, which were attached to this memo. The site plan and survey also showed signs located in the town right-of-way. Unless special permission for this has been granted, the signs should be located on the applicant's property, and the sign would also need ARB approval. Regarding topography, only some spot elevations were provided in the application around the swimming pool. These would be needed at key locations, in particular around the proposed shed and retaining wall, and anywhere that grades are being changed. Lastly, for the necessary elements of site plan, list number N, elevation drawings of proposed buildings and structures should be sufficient to show their details. So the structures that would require elevation drawings would be that are missing would be the proposed retaining wall, the enclosure fence for the shed. Note that the pool enclosure fence did provide such elevations, but they also need to provide the retaining wall, the shed enclosure fence, the hot tub and pergolas are all required to submit elevation drawings for them, given they are new proposed structures. The evaluation has a few points related to section 255-1189, which are the additional requirements for accessory structures and uses of swimming pools. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but the applicant should be advised that when these structures are built, they must conform with those requirements. That's something that would be checked over by the building department. Pool disinfectant requirements, the applicant is advised to ensure that the Suffolk County Department of Health Services is consulted with respect to their disinfection requirements for public pools, as they may be significant and will impact the proposed pool equipment requirements. As the pool is scheduled for public use, the Department of Health and Safety, Department of Health Services will require extra disinfection like chlorine. The applicant is advised the following additional approval for the project will be advised, and that's from the Architectural Review Board per section 255-730A4 of Town Code. Review for ARB is required for swimming pools, pool patios, and pool decks. And then last point is the title of plans should be consistent on all plans submitted. With this, they should be labeled Seacrest Pool and Shed Site Plan. And that's just for a matter of consistency with record keeping. Yeah, and just lastly, I note, although most of the proposal appears to conform with town code, the proper labeling and inclusion of the dimensions mentioned are necessary for record keeping and to support evidence-based decision-making. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, does the applicant wish to be heard with respect to this application?
Jean Galante from Land Planning Services. So as Chris had mentioned, there's a lot to be done with this survey and plans and the engineer for the pool. So all three of those have been looped in, and we'll be resubmitting the survey. Plans for the shed, work that'll be associated with the pool. The hot tub's moving from where it currently is, so that needs to be taken care of. The pool plans will be addressing the plumbing, the filter, the pump, and the control systems. No lighting had been, as he had mentioned, included, but then there was the issue of the current lighting, so that needs to be addressed as well. Calculations on the survey, yeah. We need to resubmit some things.
Sounds like we'll be hearing from you again.
You will. I did have one question, the sign. Normally, we don't go to the ARB till we have our approvals from you, but with the issue of the sign, if we are going to address that, that's a separate issue, and that I can go to the ARB.
Well, it's for you to decide, how you want to stage your application. We have a lot of times when folks go to the ARB at the same time that they're here and somehow hope that everything comes out at the same time on the finish line, so.
Because we are gonna have to go anyway for the other stuff, so we can hold off on that. Then there's no rush then to address the sign right now, or?
Well, you need an ARB approval on the sign, right?
Yes.
So I don't know what the ARB's calendar looks like. I don't know how long it might take before you actually, assuming all goes as you hope it will here, I can't tell you whether you should rush over to the ARB or wait, because I just don't know what
And keep it as part of what we're doing on this.
I'm sorry?
And keep it as part of what we're going to ultimately do with the
Well,
ARB.
ultimately, you're gonna, if you have a sign approval, you're gonna need to get to the ARB.
Right,
So,
right.
But,
Other things as well.
We have
That's
other
what she's
things
saying.
too.
oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna need to get it all done, so.
So we might as well wait on the sign till we do.
I'm not making that decision for you,
Okay.
as much as you might want me to.
Should I just pipe in for a sec?
Yes.
But go
I
ahead.
don't think your sign is legal. It's in the right of way, not on the site. So I think you're probably gonna have to move it onto the site, which is a site.
I'll just keep it as
Then
part
it
of
becomes
that.
our
And it becomes,
concern.
and it wouldn't need ARB approval.
It will
if it's-
still
it will
need
still
ARB.
need it, yeah.
So,
The planning board would also opine on, okay, is it okay here or there as
Okay,
part
Gina,
of
so to
the.
your point, then we're gonna just keep it all together on this, if that is in fact the case that it's moving.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
We'll
it's
figure
not.
that out and we'll address it with the survey as well. then,
Yeah, maybe
too,
we
with
should talk. Just-
Okay,
I don't think it's legal.
okay. All right, so we'll be submitting some things and you'll be hearing from us. We'll be resubmitting some.
looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, thanks. Thank you.
Yes, give me a call.
I listed all the items that are missing, but it's silly for me to repeat them. Staff did a good job going into it. I feel like a professor who's given an exam, does some essay questions, and he gets back the exam with none of them answered. So there's nothing for me to say or do, please resubmit. Here's the exam result.
You're gonna give him an incomplete. All right, well, let's attempt to give, does anybody else have any comments on this?
No.
I agree.
No, I agree.
We'll go through the questions which have been modified since the original memo, and maybe that'll help give the applicant some more guidance. These are all they're all phrased in terms of do we require these things, so that'll, I hope, help. Does the planning board require the applicant to provide details on the existing septic system? No, that's a yes.
Yes.
Does the planning board require applicants to provide details on the existing parking lots, including dimensions for parking spaces, drive aisles, and the general circulation pattern with directional movement shown?
Yeah.
We all agree to that. Okay. Skipping down, does the planning board require the applicant to revise the clearing indicated on the survey to reflect the clearing necessary to construct the proposed shed, retaining wall, and gravel walkway?
Yes.
Yes. Does the planning board require the applicant to provide the finished floor elevation and ground elevation proposed buildings and structures?
Yes.
Yes. Does the planning board require the applicant to provide floor areas for all proposed building structures and uses, including the proposed gravel walkways?
Yes.
Does the planning board require the applicant to provide side yard setbacks for each proposed building structure and use?
Yes.
Yes, all around? Must the applicant provide the dimensions between each proposed building structure and use?
Yes.
Does the planning board require the applicant to provide details on the existing lighting as required by the town of East Hampton Planning Board guidelines for lighting as adopted by the planning board?
Yes.
And does the planning board require the applicant to show contours or more key elevations of the existing topography for the site?
Yes.
Yes, and finally, does the planning board require the applicant to provide elevation drawings of proposed buildings and structures, including proposed retaining wall, pergolas, and shed enclosure fences at a scale sufficient to meet the before-mentioned requirements?
Yes.
Okay, so these are, we're trying to, direct you. I think that's the best way to characterize it. Go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, I'm glad you read those questions because I did want to make one point about the septic system. This is an old structure, it's an old building, an old site. And we just want to make sure that it doesn't have a large capacity cesspool, because if it does, then that needs to be upgraded.
An engineer has been engaged at this point to upgrade the septic system.
Upgraded?
Yes, the septic is going to be upgraded. It's not part of this. It's going to be, it's in the works, but it's not part of this.
Thank you.
Okay, that'll be addressed.
I expect that will be met positively by this group. So, okay, very well. So we've finished off our work session matters, and now we are going to, before we go to our regular meeting, we will hear from our housing director, Eric Shantz.
Hello, I'm Eric Shantz. I'm the Director of Housing. Just bear with me for a second because I need to put PowerPoint presentation up on the screen there. But I'll walk through it with you. Hopefully everybody received the memo that I prepared about this. So, oh yeah. Okay. So this is basically in front of you so that you as the planning board can give comments to the town board. That is required under the town code anytime there's going to be an amendment to the town code. So basically what we're talking about here is changing the code to permit 12 units per acre for only senior affordable housing units. Right now, the effective code restriction is 8 units per acre, and there is no distinction in the town code between senior reserved affordable housing units and sort of standard affordable housing units. So this slide is really about the need for additional senior affordable housing. I don't think I have to convince you too hard that we need more of it, but basically there's some facts here. The census identifies that the median age in town is larger than the county, state, and country. Same goes for the senior cohort or age group. Of the 3 large senior housing developments that we have in the town, Windmill 1, 2, and St. Michael's, that's 127 housing units. All are filled at this time. And basically the waiting list totals about 460 people. So right now the demand exceeds the supply by about 380%. So, but basically, if we're going to do this and change the code, there's really kind of 3 main categories here as I see it. How many additional units could be created? I'll go through that. It's really a, I guess, worst case scenario, depending on how you want to phrase that, but looking at the most impactful, situation that could happen. That's what you have to do when you're doing an environmental review of the impacts of a code change. And then really the 2 big things that come up when you're increasing housing density are groundwater and traffic. So basically, if we're looking at what the potential increase could be here, and excuse me, I'm just going to try and a little too far. There's no happy medium. There we go. So basically there's, I broke this up into sort of 4 categories of sites, and I think the ones that are likely to be impacted are the existing senior housing developments. So they're already senior housing. If you change the code and permit them to add more units, they may take advantage of that. And then vacant lots, obviously. If any of those are developed as new senior affordable housing developments. I think it's unlikely that existing non-affordable housing developments are going to be either knocked down and replaced with a new physical development or changed completely to be senior housing units. There are a number of sites that have the affordable housing overlay designation, but which are below the minimum lot area required for an affordable housing development. Again, I should have said at the beginning, all of this, an affordable housing development is only permitted on lots that have the affordable housing overlay designation. So already you're narrowed in terms of impact of this code change. It only affects properties that have the AHO designation. The other type of site that I think is unlikely to be impacted are the existing non-senior affordable housing developments. The first bullet point there. That's existing non-affordable housing uses. So we have a lot of properties, a bunch of properties that have the AHO designation, but they don't have any type of affordable housing on them. For example, right over here where the new hospital is going in, and also 300 Panago Place, those both have the affordable housing overlay designation, but they're not currently used for an affordable housing development or use, and there's really no intention of redeveloping them for that. So with this being said, what we did was calculate the potential number of additional units for all of these, even the ones that I think are unlikely to ever be redeveloped for senior housing. That's what you have to do when you look at the potential sort of worst case scenario of an impact. So I'm going to go through these next slides relatively quickly. These are those 5 groups here. Basically what you see is the list of the name of the development, the number of units that exist right now, the theoretical yield under the current town code requirement of 8 units per acre, the yield that would be allowed if the code is changed to 12 units per acre, and then the difference. So you'll see for this first category, which is existing senior housing developments, the total additional number of units that in theory you could get would be 30. This next category are vacant sites.
Yeah. How come Windmill 2 is already at the 12-acre yield? How did that happen?
Well, basically, Windmill 2 is a large. Windmill 2 is a large enough property that if we didn't do this code change, that is the subject of the conversation, they're already large enough that they could come in and ask you to go up to 60 units. They have the yield for it. So basically, I guess that's the third and fourth column. There's no difference there at 60 because they can already go up to the maximum.
Right.
I should have mentioned too, the maximum that's permitted under the town code is 60. So there's a hard cap.
It's the size of Windmill 2.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very large property. So the second category here are vacant sites. We won't go through all of them here, but basically the number you get to there is 25. I even included Route 114 in here. There is a plan to develop it, not as senior housing, so you could, in theory, cut those 9 out. But, we're looking at the largest number of units that could, in theory, be built. These are non-affordable housing uses. Again, these are all lots that have the AHO. A bunch of them have non-affordable housing uses in them. But looking at what this code would permit, if, we knock down the Montauk Playhouse and built an affordable housing development, which I don't think anyone's doing or planning to do, you could get an additional 47 units. The next are these lots that are already below the minimum lot area for an affordable housing development. That sort of renders the issue moot. There's no change there. I did in parentheses put if there was ever a code change that permitted an affordable housing development on lots of that size, what the impact would be, but that is not the case. And then these are non-senior but affordable housing developments that exist in the town. You could, in theory, get an additional 58 units out of those, but as I said, this is really only for senior affordable housing units. So really, this is also somewhat moot. This is all of that data in a large table format. Basically, what you need to look at is the large bold number at the bottom right-hand corner, which is 160. That's in theory the number of additional units that changing from 8 to 12 units per acre would permit. That would be a 21% increase of the number of existing affordable housing units we have. However, just like you saw, you were asking about Windmill 2, and they have 47 units, and they could in theory do 60. Not everybody builds the site to the maximum. Big reason for that, and this board knows more than any other group in this town, properties have unique characteristics, easements on them. You need to get proper access in there. The lot shape can be prohibitive. So, even though you have hypothetical maximum yields on properties, a lot of times that's not realistic. And just to give you an example, only one site that has a development is currently developed to the maximum that they're permitted under the current regulation of 8 units per acre. That's Gansett Meadow. Only 2 other sites are developed to within 3 of their maximum, so they're not even at the maximum, but they're very close. So I group those in sort of another category. But then the 6 remaining sites are all pretty much significantly below the density that they're already permitted under the town code. So all of that is kind of getting at the conclusion that I don't think this change is going to have a huge impact. That being said, if there's no reason not to do this code change, then getting any quantity of additional affordable housing units for seniors where it makes sense is something that I think is worthy. So getting to issues of groundwater protection, this is pretty quick here, but basically the Suffolk County Health Department would permit a yield, a density of 12 units per acre for senior housing as under their current regulations. So you see kind of side by side there, the town code says no distinction between senior housing units and non-senior. They're both 8 units per acre, but the health department says 8 units per acre for a traditional affordable housing unit or development, but they allow 12 units per acre for senior only units. So, and then, you should also note that for any of these developments that have sewage treatment, basically the issue of nitrogen loading and impact on groundwater is also rendered virtually moot because a sewage treatment plant will remove all of that from the effluent that's discharged. So basically this is just to let you know that the health department right now basically says you can do senior housing units without sewage treatment at 12 units per acre. That's fine. It's not going to negatively impact groundwater. The big reason for that is that senior housing units traditionally use much less water, generate less sanitary flow. The household sizes are generally smaller. Really a big reason for that is you generally don't have children in those households. So if we're looking at the next big issue is how will this impact traffic? So here are, there's 2 ways of doing that. One is estimates, the other is actual observations. With estimates, again, this board knows that quite often development projects require traffic studies. That's pretty standard for projects when somebody's building a new affordable housing development or anything of a substantial size. The industry standard is the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. And what you see on the right hand there are some figures that they use. Basically what they did is they, over the years, have looked at various sites throughout the country and they've assigned a multiplier to that specific use based on the number of units to estimate the number of vehicular trips per day that will generate. You can see I gave you a single family residence, which is close to 9 trips per day. An apartment that is non-senior is around, 6.5 to 4.5, depending on a weekday or a Saturday. And then you see senior housing, just like with using water usage and generated sanitary flow, is significantly less. It's a significantly less intense land use than those other 2. But as far as observed traffic conditions, that's really more important. I listed on the right hand here the 3 major senior housing developments that we have in town and the date they were completed. You can see right away Windmill 1 was created in the 80s, so most of these have been around for a while. In particular, Windmill 1 and Windmill 2, their actual access roads, access points on Acabonic are, I think, within 500 feet of each other. So, if I can exaggerate it, all that traffic is coming out to the same point. I think that's probably one of the least problematic areas in terms of traffic in the town. So I think, when you look at the traffic that's been generated from our existing senior housing developments, I'm not aware of any significant problems that exist right now. So the next slide will be a big table that breaks down the potential additional generated traffic using the Institute of Transportation Engineers multiplying factor for every single site. Again, not all of those sites are senior housing developments. Not all those, most of those sites I don't think are ever going to have a senior housing unit on them. But, you know, when you're reviewing the impacts or potential impacts of a code change, you have to look at, you know, the worst case scenario. So again, using those multiplying factors, what I did here was you'll see the rows that are highlighted in yellow are the senior housing developments, the 3 of them. And what I've highlighted in red are the 4 situations where there's the largest number of additional generated vehicular trips. So, you know, I highlighted Gansett Meadows there, which has, you know, the highest. If you look at the farther column that has the red markers on it, that's for if 12 units per acre was permitted for a non-senior housing use. So in theory, that is irrelevant. I shouldn't even say in theory. Under this proposal, that's irrelevant. I actually highlighted that for the town board because there's some obvious sort of side conversation of should we increase the density for non-senior affordable housing units. That's not what we're talking about right now. That might be something that's discussed, but it's certainly not in front of the planning board right now. So really, if you look at the 2 markers in red there on the left, those are pertinent to this discussion. The largest potential additional increase in generated traffic that you'd have would be 58, roughly, additional trips per day if Gansett Meadows was changed from a non-senior affordable housing development into a senior housing development. So basically, these 4 bullet points that you see here are what that would mean in terms of how much time it would take before an additional vehicular trip was happened if you developed it out to the maximum that would be permitted under 12 units per acre. What you can see there is that, you know, that 58.32 is the first bullet point there. If you condense that to between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., and I will say a lot of traffic studies don't do this, they do peak hour, but this is giving you a good estimate. You know, if you're looking at that number of vehicular trips on that site between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., which is when most people are traveling, you're talking about an additional vehicular trip every 10 and a half minutes. So we're not talking about a huge impact on traffic here. So the other thing to keep in mind here too, and the planning board is a big factor in this, are the other sort of continuing requirements and restrictions. Affordable housing developments, again, are only permitted in the Affordable Housing Overlay District. Right now, this says actually only 3 sites currently vacant with the AHO. It's actually really 2 if you don't count the Route 114 property. That affordable housing overlay designation can only be placed on a property by the town board. So basically, if this was going to have any kind of substantial impact in terms of additional number of units, the town board would have to add the AHO designation to multiple additional properties. Again, any new affordable housing development or any application to add units on a site will require site plan approval from the planning board. If it's a substantial expansion, it also requires a special permit. Any new affordable housing development requires site plan and special permit from you. And then, you know, also, as you know, with any application, whether it be an affordable housing development or not, you need to apply your site plan standards or your special permit standards to it. And even if we do change the code to allow up to 12 units per acre for senior affordable housing units, that doesn't mean that you have to approve it as a board. It might not make sense on a specific property. So there are other safeguards that are in there. But basically, this is a summary of all those points that I just made. There is a need for additional affordable housing. This code change going from 8 units per acre to 12 units per acre as a maximum aligns the town code with what the county health department permits. Senior housing units are known to generate a relatively low number of vehicular trips compared to other residential land uses. The town's existing senior affordable housing developments have not created significant traffic issues in the decades since they were built. There's not a potential for a significant number of additional senior affordable housing units due to the development of vacant parcels or the redevelopment of parcels which currently have senior only affordable housing developments on them. Any new or expanded housing development with senior units still requires approval of this board, the planning board. And again, the town board controls where the affordable housing overlay designation goes. So there's only a limited number of properties right now in the town that this code change would apply to. So basically, that's the summary. This is the last slide that I had in this presentation. I will say, and this is, well, I mean, I guess for the planning board right now, certainly ask me questions, discuss whether or not you agree with this code change. If you do, then sort of the next stage is what is the specific code change going to be? This is basically how I had it laid out. I've since added something which would be to Part E there. So I guess if I kind of just walk you through this quickly, both of these are two code sections in the specific special permit standards for an affordable housing development and then for a multiple residence. An affordable housing development is actually a subtype of multiple residence. Multiple residence really just means connected units in one building. So resort units such as condominiums can be a type of multiple residence. Multiple residence is a larger category that affordable housing development falls into. But if you're going to make this change, there's a provision in the multiple residence special permit standards that needs to be changed too. So starting with the affordable housing development, Part C there basically says that if you're doing it in affordable housing development as a multiple residence, you need to meet all of the dimensional regulations of the multifamily district. That mostly just establishes what the property line setbacks are and the building and total lot coverage. However, and this is actually an existing conflict in the code where it says something else in terms of minimum lot area and density. But if you put, I wrote this out with what I think is sort of the path of least resistance to effectuate this code change. I think if you just add, you can clearly see it there with the exception of the minimum lot area requirement to Part C. I think that's a change that needs to be done. I think that's effective. Part E is the part of the special permit standards for an affordable housing development that right now establishes 8 units per acre as the maximum. I think you just need to insert language in there that says 12 units specific to senior apartments. What I would also add, and what I'm going to do is, because this is the last slide, I'll stop and then I'll let everybody talk and I'll put up an amended version. But basically, what I would propose now, this Part E would have that language that's there, but then would have some language at the end that would talk about how you calculate the density if somebody wants to do a mix of senior and regular affordable housing units. Because, and I thought of that, I thought of all of you guys because you know that I know that a lot of times when you get a code in front of you and it's not very clear on things and there's ambiguity, it can be a nightmare as far as what you're trying to do with a particular site plan. So I came up with some language that basically just says where there's a mix of senior and non-senior affordable housing units, you'll go by the maximum shall be twice what the otherwise permitted amount of density by the health department is. That basically effectively is the restriction and makes it so that what you would do is just add up the number of non-senior affordable housing units versus the number of senior affordable housing units, calculate that generated flow, and it has to be within what's permitted on that property. So that would, that's a weird kind of way of wording it, but I think it's actually the most efficient of establishing that basically each unit they're proposing that's non-senior, they can have 8 per acre, and then if they're senior, they can do 12. You basically add them and divide it, and figure out what the permitted density would be. And then obviously the last one here, it just says, with the exception of senior apartments, there shall be no less than 5,444 square feet. What that means is 8 units per acre. That's an eighth of an acre. So I'll put this down and try to put up that sort of more thorough, more complete version of the code changes, and I'll leave it to you for discussion and questions.
That's, well, Jen doesn't know this, but we're all experiencing deja vu right now with the thoroughness of Eric's report. So thank you.
Speed.
I'm sorry?
And speed.
And speed, yes, and speed, but we follow it,
We do.
Kind of like if
I was right there.
somebody else is speaking a foreign language, you get right in there. Question for you. the folks who live in these apartments, whether it's senior or not senior, they all have to pass through the housing office. They have to get approved by the housing office, correct?
I'm sorry, trying to get this up. You're saying,
The applicants, the folks who live in these units, regardless of the change that you're proposing, they all have to make application to the housing office and.
They do not.
How does it work?
Yeah, my office, the Office of Housing and Community Development, we do not govern or administer any of the rental units in town. Most of those are the East Hampton Housing Authority, so like 3 Mile Harbor that you saw, they're going to run that. They run most of our rental, multi-unit affordable housing developments. The senior ones are actually exclusively Windmill HDFC, so they handle the application and placement process in that
They
development.
themselves, also St. Michael's does that?
Yes, yep.
Now, tell me if I got this wrong, but it's my understanding that these kind of houses, this kind of housing is not town resident exclusive, right? Anybody from Suffolk County can
It's
apply?
not, it's not, I know they usually take efforts to I won't even advertise it where, you know, they won't put an ad when applications are available and open. All of our local developments won't actively go and seek out other municipalities to try and get applications from. You know, every local municipality in the country is governed by the Fair Housing Act, which says that you can't put restrictions in that restrict a certain class of people. So, you know, in theory, no, there isn't any kind of overarching restriction that limits it only to town residents. That being said, I know if Kate Casey were still here, because she said it in multiple forums, and I'm sure the Windmill people would say it too, and I know it to be a fact. The majority of those developments, and I think it's somewhere near like 97 or 98%, which means some of them have 1, 2, maybe 3 units in them that are occupied by people who are, you know, were not residents before they got in there. The majority of them are residents. So that is, I mean, it's a very valid concern, and it's something that I've heard from members of the public before. But I think there is sort of a narrative out there that this isn't for residents, and it very much is.
Okay, so the idea is that when you talk about the age, the fact that East Hampton has an older population than the rest of the county and the rest of the nation by considerable factors, this proposal will address that. It arises from that, and it's not as though we're going to suddenly find well, could happen, but it's intended to address an immediate problem in this town, right?
Yeah, and again, you know, I think the most realistic situation that this is going to impact is either Windmill 2, which can already expand under the existing code, or Windmill 1 or St. Michael's applying to you to add a couple more units. I forget the exact number with St. Michael's. It wasn't that crazy. I believe Windmill 1 would have the capacity. The bottom line is it's not a ton of them. So it's not as though this code change would open up, you know, 100 new units are going to be available, and we're going to have to put out, you know, new advertisements, and all those developments are going to have to reopen their lists. You know, like I showed you in one of the first slides, there's 127 senior housing units right now. There's 460 people on the waiting list. And I'm pretty sure most of, you know, the vast majority of those 460 people are people that live in the town.
And so this proposal, it's not like it's going to empty that list.
No,
remotely close to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the you know, double-edged sword or whatever, or the, dichotomy there, is that the good thing about it is that it's not going to have some kind of huge substantial impact as far as traffic and the number of units. The bad thing about it is that it's not going to have a substantial, it's not going to, and we need more housing units.
We need more.
But every little bit
Properties
helps.
designated.
Well, yeah, that's,
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
no, that was all I.
So, but I'm very supportive of it, even though the effect might be minimal, as you just said, right? I think it's a whatever we can do to add to the stock, it's great. But how did this sort of come to be, and why is it only about senior housing, right? I think I know the answer. Let me try this one out on you. It's because of the lower impacts, groundwater, right?
Yep.
Traffic, but is it also because of the health department's exception for senior housing?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, because the county would have a difficult time right now with non-senior only housing of any kind at that density.
They would, unless you have sewage treatment, they won't permit it.
But if you have sewage treatment.
Yeah, if you have sewage treatment, our local municipality, town code, density restrictions, the health department doesn't care. They just care that you design and engineer a system that can handle whatever amount of effluent is going into it. Their mind is only what is the discharge. So if you're not using sewage treatment and you're just using conventional sanitary systems, they limit the amount of effluent that can be,
right.
I'm not telling you something, I'm telling you something you already know. But basically, they would say they treat senior housing units as different and having less generated sanitary flow. So putting aside sewage treatment, if you don't have that, they already do and have for a number of years allowed 8 units per acre for non-senior and 12 for senior. Historically, and I've reviewed a lot of the old code provisions. Our density restrictions were and are based off of what the health department said. They originate from the 1984 comp plan when that was the limitation. I think it was about 12 years ago that the health department finally changed their regulations to let senior housing developments to deem them as generating less sanitary flow and then by effect allowing more units per acre. We never updated our code to coordinate with that. What I'm proposing is to do that. And yes, I think that doing that for senior only affordable housing developments is, for lack of a better term, a slam dunk, because I think it's a minimal impact on the things that matter. The town board might want to discuss that on non-senior affordable housing units, but we're not doing that right now. We're not there yet.
Right, not doing it now. Yeah, I'm sure you probably know that there's a private investor who's interested in
That's a different kind of thing. It's workplace housing.
Yeah, all right. So that definition really is different.
They want 12 units.
Just one final thing
sure,
is just that just to be clear, the 12 units per acre thing that's mitigated by the inclusion of an STP.
Well, I'm saying everything as far as the generated sanitary flow will be mitigated by having a sewage treatment plant. Because that, you know what I mean? But if somebody is not doing sewage treatment, which also, by the way, is, most of our developments have that. And there are certain criteria that require it as mandatory to upgrade to that. But yeah, once sewage treatment is provided, the health department doesn't really, it's sort of like they don't care. And the groundwater flow becomes moot because you're treating all of the nitrogen. That leaves really the main thing that could be impacted being traffic and additional generated traffic, which is very minimal.
Right, exactly. All right, so just want to be sure I heard that right. Thank you.
Michael had something and then Jay.
Go ahead.
Mike, very quick question. What is the age for senior housing? What's the?
It depends. It does depend on the development, but generally, I believe it's 62.
Mr. Shantz.
How many applications do you have?
Yeah, I know. Do you have applications?
Yeah.
Mr. Shantz, on the top of page 7
yes.
of your memo, you say.
What mistake did I make?
Well, you say the Suffolk County Department of Health may also mandate the addition of a sewage treatment plant. I assume that is for a senior only housing.
It could be
What
for either.
situations would they mandate that? And I know we're not supposed to talk about non-senior housing, but if it's 12 units and there's a sewage treatment plant, then Suffolk County Department of Health that wouldn't care, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, once you go to a sewage treatment, they're just going to make sure that it's engineered correctly to handle the load that it's handling. There is no density restriction from the health department if you have sewage treatment. There's only our local municipalities.
Then why do you have this sentence then? Is this referring to a senior housing that one tick above?
Yeah, I was just trying to make the point of, I'm trying to think, Windmill 1 I know doesn't, Windmill 2 doesn't, and St. Michael's doesn't. But they don't have individual sanitary systems, so it's not like, each building has its own sanitary system. St. Michael's has conventional. So if you were adding units to say, so like, let's use St. Michael's as an example, because it was built, I think, 10 years ago or something like that. I should know that. I reviewed the site plan. But if, so that has a conventional sanitary system where all the buildings are tied into it. It's not only not a sewage treatment plant, it's not a low nitrogen sanitary system. So if they're going to add any units on that site, first of all, our town code and the Suffolk County Sanitary Code immediately mandates that they go to a low nitrogen system. But I strongly suspect that whomever was reviewing that for the county would say, because it's a multi-unit development, that's not enough. You need to provide, some type of sewage treatment for the entire facility. So that's kind of what I was getting at is, also the health department might take it a step further and say, you're adding, one unit, but you have a sanitary system that's not what we would require now. Build what we require now, which is sewage treatment.
So that's not a mistake. You're doing good.
Yeah, here's my problem with this. I look at affordable housing in three categories: the senior housing, the workforce housing, and I don't know what you would call the other one, but young people, middle-aged, ordinary workers, year-round residents, that type of thing. And I prioritize those three categories. We're putting the young people, middle-aged category at the top, the most important. And I do that in thinking of what kind of community we want. It's the most important to us. So I value that the highest. I value seniors housing second, and then the workforce housing third. What this does, and it doesn't do it for the existing senior housing centers like Windmill and so forth, St. Michael's. But if you're going to designate new properties, new land for senior housing, it gives it a competitive edge to build more senior housing than the other senior housing. If the people who are lobbying the town board now to change the workforce housing to 12 units per acre succeed, it would give them an additional competitive edge, in addition to the competitive edge that they already have in that they are being funded by wealthy establishments that have money to do this. So I would be for this if it just applies to the existing housing that's there, Windmills in St. Michael. I would not be for this if it applies to any new designated properties, because there aren't any right now. The only one is the fire department, which that's not going to happen. And what's the other one?
350.
350, yeah, which we know what's happening there. So so that's my point. And I have two technical questions on it.
Sure.
When you said that we're maxed out at 60, what section of the code does that?
It's in the specific special permit standards for an affordable housing development. It says no one site can have more than 60 units. I think it's part B of that, that was, or C of it's right in that code. It's sandwiched between actually the two of those code sections that I was showing you before.
And the other question I had, with the language that you want to add to the code pertaining to mixed use properties where you have senior and regular affordable housing. So you have 8 and 12, let's say that would happen. Let's say you have 2 acres. And so how would that work? Just go through those numbers.
Well, you have a tricky problem there if you have to clarify of, is this a new development? And then also you can't have only 2 acres. You need to have 3 acres to do a new affordable housing development.
Let's say you have 3 acres and you want to build, you want to max out on the senior housing and the regular affordable housing. How would those numbers work there?
Yeah. So basically the idea was, so under that situation, non-senior, you could do 24 units, and senior, you could do 36 if you move it to 12. So the idea here would be you would take the generated sanitary flow of all of the non-senior and all of the senior units, add them up, and then, divide it and figure out what you would otherwise be allowed. But basically, since a senior unit, or I guess a non-senior unit, is at 1.5 times the density of a senior unit, you could have 1.5 senior units for every non-senior unit, and then you could just go down. So you could remove, but I guess how does that? You could remove 2 non-senior units, but put 3 senior units in its place. It's basically just whatever the math works out to of you can't do more than 8 units per acre of your density of non-senior and 12 units per acre of your senior. So if you wanted to, and we don't have, with a few exceptions, I believe, although I would have to ask Kitty Casey about it, we don't have any developments where there's any kind of major mingling of senior reserved housing units and non-senior housing units. They're all sort of exclusive. So I don't know how often this is going to come up, but let's say Gansett Meadows has a yield for 2 additional non-senior affordable housing units. That's just wording that says, or you could do 3 senior housing units because they're equal, in terms of the density to 2 of the more restrictive non-senior housing units. I don't know, it's a confusing way of explaining. I'm sorry.
It's not likely to arise very often.
That's true,
but you're thinking.
But if it does, you want to make sure that they're not exceed. You know what I mean?
We know how much we got.
I just want to reiterate my point is I don't want to give a competitive edge to senior over regular. You understand my point?
Yeah, no, I totally do. I guess my thinking on it is, if we can do that for the senior housing, let's do it because we'll get some more units and we need them, and the impact is less. And that's why, we've kind of advanced the effort to change the senior housing density regulation because we think it's easier. Both the workforce or employee housing or whatever it may come to be called and traditional affordable housing, you could even see it in the trip generation manual, multiplying factors. They're more intensive uses. They generate more activity than senior housing units. So we'll have to take a harder look at those. And there's probably going to be more significant impacts from those different types of land uses being permitted to go up to a higher density. I'd rather look at, those are going to take I don't want to say a harder look because we're taking a hard look on this, but it's more involved and it's not as easy because, you know what I mean? It's a more intensive land use.
We take baby steps and just change the code to apply to existing senior housing?
Existing developments?
Yeah.
It's something you're saying existing all affordable.
He means all, I think he means
just
Windmill 1, Windmill 2,
Right.
and St. Michael's.
Yeah.
I think that's.
The only other ones would be
restrictive for what they're trying to do, though.
Yeah.
I know, I get where you're coming from, and I don't disagree that much about that. But, I think the idea here is that we're trying to address a need with minimal impact. You made a good point there about the trip generation. I mean, there's no question that if we went forward with that workforce housing, I mean, that's intended to create people driving to work. So,
But the other side of that is they're not driving into East Hampton town. They're not coming from.
yeah, okay, all right. So it's a different. You're right. It's a different traffic impact. But I don't think that's what the traffic studies are looking at. Is they're not looking at not just where's the traffic coming from, as what's the impact on the local road network. And the whole idea here is that. I mean, you talk about baby steps. I think this is the baby step. Well, you've got like fetus steps. It's not going to change that much. I get where you're coming from, but if we're going to go for this, then I think this is a modest enough.
Well, there's not that many opportunities to prove the concept.
Right. Well, that's a good, very good point.
I have one more question. There are only certain properties that have been designated affordable housing overlay. What's the likelihood that more properties in the future will be designated AHO? And how do you choose those properties? And is there a lot more out there?
I don't know what the likelihood is. I hope it's very high. I'd like to see more properties have that. I mean, obviously I'm a little biased being the director of housing. I'd like to see us expand that. That though is also something that when the town board, and the town board ultimately has, the authority to alter zoning, when they do, and if they do look into expanding those, they'll have to do a full environmental review, and it'll be in many ways similar to what I was doing here, which is to look, okay, we're going to put an AHO over this 10-acre property or something like that. What's the maximum number of units that could be built? What would the generated traffic and sanitary be from those impacts? So I hope we get more of them. It's not easy. It takes, you have to take a hard look under SECRA and do a thorough review of the impacts. They're actually I'm trying to remember if it's not in the code under the Affordable Housing Overlay District, which is 255-3 that establishes the overlay districts. It's actually in the comprehensive plan, I believe, that talks about adding AHOs when it sort of introduced that concept. It gives some criteria that the town board is supposed to look at. Has public water, is close to public transportation, is of adequate size, I'm forgetting that, doesn't have protected natural features, significant amount of them on them. So there are certain criteria that are used to say whether or not a property is really ideal for it. But that comes into play when they talk about adding the AHO on a specific property. And for that reason, it kind of is very specific, for that property in terms of what the actual impact might be.
I feel like those parcels are not really, they're gone, they were never protected to begin with,
Yeah.
Can you imagine the traffic there?
Just one more thing
Sorry.
that crossed your competitive edge crossed my mind too when this was being presented. And I wonder if, we're not supposed to talk about the non-senior housing, but let's say this passes. When will we talk about the non-senior 12 units? Is it going to be a year and a half? What
he's saying is just the whole impact again, right?
Yeah.
So it's just this
is the test case.
This is
higher impact, more cars, more everything.
And when do we go there? When they think that there's enough popular support for the idea of, I don't want to speak for you, but I would think that might be a consideration. And that maybe, and again, I don't know if this is what you have in mind long-term, but maybe if it works for the seniors and it's okay, then that gives the ability to impetus, if you will, to going a little further. And then maybe it wouldn't be 12, maybe it would be 10. Maybe, but again, back to the thought of baby steps. I mean, speaking strictly for myself, I'm prepared to endorse this idea. I think that it's reasonable. It addresses a need, and the impact. You know, we worry about impacts, and we have this idea often that, you know, the town will change the law, and the next day, you know, the world will change. But this just kind of sets the stage for the world to change at a more organic rate and at a little higher density.
Yeah, I can tell Windmill, they walk to the supermarket, which is so nice. You know, the way that's been placed, it's incredible.
Well, you talked about being on the planning department when you did St. Michael's.
Not Windmill.
And you went St. Michael's.
I meant St. Michael's.
Yeah.
I meant St. Michael's.
And-
That's where Chris is.
And
Yeah.
I was on the planning board when St. Michael's was built, and that very issue, the idea that it was across the street from the IGA, the post office, it was the right place and the right, the right project in the right place. And the only thing we worried about was traffic on 27.
Yeah.
Flipping people.
Aggressive drivers. And the idea of a underground tunnel didn't fly, nor did a
It's the
bridge.
turnpike.
Yeah, right, yes, exactly. And none of that worked, and we just depend upon the careful driving of our town residents and guests. So,
Yeah, no, I support this project.
Yeah.
Like I said, last year everybody was talking, and I do. I think it's a minimal impact.
Let's go around the table. Do we want to put a letter out? Do we want to put a letter to the town? Is that what you're looking for?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Supporting the project
Absolutely.
I would like to,
with a reservation?
yeah, that proviso that I don't like it giving a competitive edge over the regular.
I'm with Lou on that.
All right, then, Tina, when you're putting the letter together, that there's sentiment on the board for, while there is sentiment on the board, against giving a competitive edge, I like that phrase also, to senior housing, there was broad support on the board for the proposal.
Yeah.
Does that sound, can we all
Sounds
do
good.
that?
Sounds good.
Okay, very good. Well, okay, now that you've enjoyed your moment of deja vu and nostalgia, see you later. Okay. All right, we're gonna move into the regular meeting now. We've got 3 boards of review. First one is Ann Walker, 166 Greenwich Street, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-19-3-35. The board of review, the work that will be done is to prepare the roadway subbase, including the cul-de-sac, starting at Grace Avenue and continuing along Georgica Place for a distance of 75 feet by 20 feet. That's 167 yards. Perform asphalt-based course paving and widening to a width of 20 feet, including the 50-foot diameter cul-de-sac, and repave with 1.5-inch New York State Type 6 asphalt top course. The amount of the bond on this is $16,500, and I move for its approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass 6-0. Next is the request of Dina Zanger, number 2 Hawthorne Avenue, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-121-2-1.1. The work on this one entails installing asphalt top course pavement with a width of 24 feet starting at the intersection of Springs Fireplace and continuing along Hartley Boulevard for 538 linear feet. 1.5-inch New York State Type 6F asphalt. The bond is $18,000. I've reviewed the board of review and I move for its approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass 6-0. And finally, the application of Francois Joy Lawless at 26 Walton Street, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-60-1-20.1. The work to be performed on this is considerable amount of work. Clear and prune existing vegetation on the north side of Corbin Avenue within the shoulder for a distance of 50 linear feet. install 2 leaching basins of 8 foot by 12 feet on the north side of Corbin Avenue, and then it specifies the place and the type of leaching frame. Clean the existing catch basin, leaching catch frame and leaching basin on the north side of Corbin, and pave 150 linear feet of Corbin Avenue at the intersection of Northwest Street, continuing west, again, 1.5 inch New York State type 6F asphalt. The bond on this is $20,000. I reviewed the board of review and I move for its approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed, 6-0. I reviewed the minutes. I have one change that I would like to make on, where it says other, 350 Panago Workforce Housing. I would like the minutes to reflect that this was, this matter came before us as part of a subdivision approval. That should be made clear in the minutes. Okay. And with that change, I move for the approval of these minutes to June 26, 2024. We were all here for that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
As changed, as suggested.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, pass 6-0. Finally, we have a schedule a public hearing, and here's my cheat sheet. Whose is this?
It's mine.
It's yours, Jen, go.
Got it. Planning Board of the Town of East Hampton, in the matter of the application of the Ranger Estates final subdivision modification of Casio, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-113-324.11. Darren Emacazio, owner, has made application for modification of final subdivision approval.
All you need to do is number 4.
Number 4, all I need to do is number 4. I will skip to number 4. A public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held in Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, August 14th, 2024, at 6:30 PM, or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard to consider the said application. Do I need to say anything else? I move for this public hearing to be scheduled.
I'm going to second it.
Excellent.
All those in favor? Pass 6-0. Okay. Does anyone else have anything for tonight? For the
Motion to
meeting?
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass 6-0.